Welcome to the Power of Purity podcast, the show that empowers men to experience their sexual gift in a healthier way. Now here's your host, Tony Ingrassia.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Power of Purity podcast. I'm so glad that you could be with me today, and I'm very excited about this episode today and the next episode because I have a very special guest, Keelie Reason. And Keelie has actually been a guest on the podcast before. If you've been following me, you're aware of that. And Keelie also is known as the Sex Talk Lady. And she's a writer and she does blogs. So, hey, Keelie, how are you?
I'm doing well.
I really appreciate you being with us, and thank you so much for visiting with us for this Valentine's Day discussion.
Great. Thanks so much for having me.
Right. And I just want to say up front that if you want to check out more of what Keelie does, she has two websites. One is called lovehopeadventure.com, and the second one is IamTheSexTalkLady.com. And before the interview, I was just checking out your websites again, Keelie, and I went to IamTheSexTalkLady.com, and I see that some of your most recent articles are pretty interesting. Women and orgasm. One was using mirrors during sex, what your husband wants most from you during sex, how to be more enthusiastic during sex, learning to talk sexy during sex, 5 ways to feel sexier during sex, how to get your sexy back, and ways to have hot sex. So these sound like pretty intriguing topics to me. And how would you put words to the two websites? I know you mentioned it before, but why do you have two separate websites and how are they distinct from one another?
There's a couple of reasons. First of all, Love Hope Adventure is a general marriage blog, and I started it as a way to address different, topics in marriage and be kind of far-reaching. But whenever I've talked about sex over there, I get a huge response. However, it's kind of difficult to be very open on that blog about sex because of some of the promotions that I do. It can be kind of a problem with that, but also I have a lot of readers that do not necessarily feel comfortable with that. And so I try to use Love Hope Adventure as a way to build trust with someone that needs sex advice, but they're not going to go to I Am the Sex Talk Lady right away. But they could easily be introduced to the way I speak over there, which is very openly. Unlike on Love Hope Adventure, I feel like I need to tone the language down more. I have to be much more careful about the words I use and what I say. And I established I Am the Sex Talk Lady because I felt I was being very hindered on Love Hope Adventure due to my readership and the nature of that blog. So they basically go hand in hand. I bring in a lot of people to the website through Love Hope Adventure, and then I refer them for more very, detailed sex advice on I Am the Sex Talk Lady.
Okay, so it just sounds like I Am the Sex Talk Lady is really the purpose is a very sexual theme, and that's what you focus on, and that's what you talk about, and that's why you have a separate site for that topic. Mm-hmm. So that's awesome. So if I could share just with our audience pretty quick, the reason that I invited Keelie back on the Power of Purity podcast, when these two episodes of the podcast air, it's going to be actually around Valentine's Day. This year, it so happens that Valentine's Day is on a Tuesday, February 14th, and we produce a new podcast. For those of you that follow us, you know that a new podcast comes out every Tuesday. So I thought it just seems appropriate to do a podcast on the topic of Valentine's Day. And so as I was thinking about that, I thought who better to appeal to than Keelie Reason, the Sex Talk Lady, and that Keelie would have some good ideas to share with us about this concept of Valentine's Day. So the first part, episode 1, is going to air on February 7th, and then part 2 will be on Valentine's Day this year, February 14th. But I do want to say one thing, and that is I realize that many of the people who will listen to this particular episode will be listening. It won't even be close to Valentine's Day. People will be listening in September and July, right, and November and April. So I really just kind of want to say that I feel like what we're going to be talking about, of course it's appropriate for Valentine's Day, but not necessarily just for Valentine's Day, because I feel like the stuff we're going to be talking about can probably apply to our lives and our marriages and our relationships, and even to the topic of sex and marriage anytime during the year, right? And for that reason, I think what I'm going to call these episodes, instead of Valentine's Day, I think I'm going to call these episodes Spice It Up. And the idea is let's learn and be encouraged to spice it up any time of the year, whether it's Valentine's Day or not. But so happens that I invited Keelie so that we could talk a little bit about Valentine's Day. So that was my idea, Keelie.
Awesome.
And when I initiated toward you and I asked you, would you consider coming back on the podcast so we could talk about this, you very graciously responded, said that you would do it. And you mentioned in your response that Valentine's Day is your favorite holiday.
Absolutely.
And that you love to decorate for Valentine's Day as much as Christmas itself. So why is Valentine's Day so important to you, and why is it your favorite holiday?
Well, there's several reasons. First of all, I really just think that Valentine's Day decorations are beautiful. I mean, they really are. I love the hearts and the pink and red. And so I like decorating for that time of year because I like the decorations. But also, I like the holiday because I feel it's a time to celebrate love. And not just love between a husband and wife, but just love in general. And I like holidays because it allows you to do things that aren't necessarily socially acceptable the rest of the year. Like, on Halloween, we can dress up. And that's normal. But the rest of the year, it would be like, what is wrong with you?
Right.
So on Valentine's, I can tell the people in my life that I love them. I can send them cards. I can, send them hearts. And it is not going to be weird. So that's one of the reasons why I really love Valentine's Day, because I feel it is a celebration of love. It is a time where we can just, think about God's love for us, what he's done for us, his love for humanity, and how we do that with other people, how we express that.
I like that. I really like this concept of a celebration of love. So I think that was very articulate, and I like the way that you said that. Do you think that Valentine's Day is really important to most women?
I wouldn't know. I don't know that I've had that conversation very often with people. I'm not sure, to be honest. I mean, I think that the television tells us that women are obsessed with the holiday, but I honestly don't know if that's an accurate depiction.
I would think, just very generically that men tend to be more kind of macho and gruff and tend toward maybe insensitivity more than women. Women are more sensitive and tuned in and relational. So I would think in general that maybe Valentine's Day is very meaningful to a lot of women. I'm not sure, but I would think that it's a time where we kind of intuitively think about our relationships and what's going on in our marriage and with our spouse and where we at and how do we move toward one another and connect with each other. So it feels like it's a time to kind of really be invited to turn toward one another and maybe kind of think about each other and move toward one another and try to maybe connect with one another or reconnect with one another. And it kind of gives people, like you were saying, kind of an excuse to do that. So where do we go from here, Keelie? I have some questions I can ask. I don't know exactly what thoughts you might have about Valentine's Day. I was thinking, for example, just what do you have some suggestions on how to have a great Valentine's Day? What do you and your husband do? How do you have a sexy Valentine's Day? How do you be creative? Should people try things that they've never tried before? Just what would you have to say about it?
Well, what's interesting is I don't know if you follow JD over at Uncovering Intimacy. He used to be Sex Within Marriage. He actually really hates Valentine's Day and feels that many people do not like it because there's so much pressure to do it right and to do all this stuff. And we've got to go to Jared's and we've got to have this amazing supper and whatever. And I'll be really honest, Austin and I celebrate almost every milestone, whether it's anniversaries, birthdays, Valentine's, any celebration, basically the same way. And that is, we just focus on spending time with each other, both through conversation and physical intimacy. And we don't always even get to go out. Sitters can be difficult to come by.
Right.
So we just make sure that we pick a night of the week, whether it's on the actual holiday or whatever the celebration is, and we don't cut the TV on. We are going to focus on physical intimacy with each other and spending time together.
Right. Yeah, that sounds good.
Honestly, we are very low key, even though Valentine's is my favorite holiday, and I decorate the house and I buy Valentine's for the kids and I do things for Austin. Typically, this is a time of the year where we make something for one another. Austin has been known to make me several Valentine's cards in the past. And actually, he released those printables on our Etsy shop because, a lot of people do want something unique for Valentine's. And Austin has done very special things for me in the past, but they're very low key. It's not something huge. Like, he's not whisking me away for a weekend and buying me expensive jewelry and taking me out to a $100 dinner. It's just simple and it's very meaningful. So I think the focus for any holiday and celebration, if you want it to be successful, is just go for meaningful. It doesn't have to be big and extravagant. It just has to be, I put thought into this, whatever that looks like in your relationship.
And that's where the word meaningful comes in. So I really like that, what you're saying, Keelie, the idea of almost like giving yourself permission to keep it low key. You talked about couples sometimes assume this kind of pressure, almost like Valentine's Day is coming up. I've got to do something extravagant. I've got to make this special. I've got to go above and beyond the call of duty. And as JD was saying, your reference that he doesn't like it for that reason because it almost puts too much pressure on people. So it feels, I really like this idea that it's okay for people to give themselves permission to allow it to be low key. And it just occurs to me, I wonder if that could be a good thing even for a couple to discuss maybe in the days leading up to Valentine's Day, to establish with one another that, hey, I'm looking forward to Valentine's Day and I want to be with you, and what do you think? What do you want to do? But I'm not sure that it has to be extravagant, like to establish with one another that, hey, it's okay if we just have kind of a low-key day and we enjoy one another.
What's funny is that Austin has purchased like heart balloons that say I love you. We have hung red lights in our house in spirit of decorating for Valentine's. And he, like I said, has created these printables for me that are cards that are Valentine's-y. And what's funny is I actually have those things throughout my room all year long. And they are clearly Valentine's, but they are always up because they mean so much to me. And it's just us celebrating our love for each other. So it's pretty meaningful that that's how we've chosen to do it. And it, like I said, it's not extravagant. It's not huge. But the couple that, like, my encouragement is this. A lot of couples will say, it's too much pressure. I'm not going to bother celebrating it. Let me just tell you something. Any chance you get the time to celebrate your spouse and celebrate your love for one another, you need to take advantage of that because that grows a healthy marriage.
Right. Yeah, I agree. That's awesome. And so it really is just another opportunity to express your love toward one another, to let the other person know how special they are to you, to move toward them, initiate toward them, do something special. And it is a perfect opportunity for that. So, Keelie, I had one idea that I was thinking. I'll just throw it in for free just for the fun of it. Is that okay?
Go ahead.
Well, years ago, I owned a remodeling company, and we would do this odd promotion. We were always looking for a promotion, a sale, a promotion, to bring attention and motivate people to consider purchasing a home remodeling project. So several years in a row, we did this promotion called Christmas in July. And so we had this office right next to Highway 70 in the St. Louis area, so really massive traffic count. And we would literally, in the middle of July, decorate our office for Christmas. We'd put up Christmas lights and Santa Claus and reindeer and just a really extravagant Christmas decoration. So here people are driving by, especially at night, and it's lit up like Christmas, and we have a big banner, Christmas in July sale. So my idea was just that I think it might be a fun idea to surprise your spouse with a Valentine's Day when it's not Valentine's Day. In other words, what if you did Valentine's Day in July or in November? Surprise them, catch them off guard, almost like they're expecting Valentine's Day on Valentine's Day, right? Because it's February 14th. Mm-hmm. But I feel like what I'm trying to say is complementary to what I was trying to say in the beginning when we began to talk, that I feel like these principles don't necessarily apply just to this one day, February 14th, but that we should seek to make our spouse feel special and move toward them and celebrate our love with one another anytime during the year. So I just thought it was kind of intriguing, this idea of doing a Valentine's Day when it's not Valentine's Day. And I made a little list of some ideas, like what if your spouse came home one day and you had a hot bubble bath ready for them, and you had petals from a dozen roses floating in the bubble bath, and you had a nice bottle of chilled wine waiting for them, and you had romantic music playing in the background, and maybe you have a small platter next to the bathtub with some chocolate-covered strawberries, and you have warm oil waiting to give them a special massage after their relaxing bath, and maybe you top this whole thing off with their favorite dinner cooking in the oven for later that evening. So it would be a very special celebration and a very special time, and it would really surprise your spouse.
I think that is really a great idea. Austin and I suggest that couples do have sexy nights with one another regularly, and by regularly that means whatever, like once a month or once every other month or whatever you can manage, where you just say, tonight we are having a sex date. We are focusing on one another, and it's not going to be an afterthought. We're actually going to put time and energy into this. So I'm going to put on lingerie. I'm going to light candles and put on music and all those different kinds of things. And if you do that regularly, it makes those times really special. It's kind of like going out to dinner. Like maybe you're not going to go out to a really nice fancy restaurant every time, but every once in a while it's really awesome to do that. And that's kind of how we see those sexy nights, is that it's really awesome to do that every now and then because it gets you excited about sex. It gives you kind of a high, and it just generally helps you to bond with your spouse.
Right. Great idea. I like that. When I was listening to you, I'm picturing, sometimes I see in pictures, so imagine a scale from 1 to 10, escalating up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And as you go up the scale, for lack of a better way to say it, it's like, let's just say the sex gets hotter, okay? So 10 is like the zenith. 10 is like the maximum unbelievable, romantic, perfect movie ending extravaganza of love. Fireworks exploding above your head, just a 10. You could never, ever beat a 10. Well, the fact is, I'm thinking the reality in marriage is that every time a couple makes love or has a sexual experience, it's probably not going to be a 10, right? Maybe sometimes it happens and it feels like, well, that was like a 4, or that was a 5, or that was maybe a 6. Every once in a while, we get an 8, a 9, a 10. Maybe sometimes it feels like a 2. I don't know. But the point being that there is kind of this scale, and it's not always going to be a 10, but I feel like what you're saying is that it's okay that on maybe a pretty regular basis to, with deliberate intention, try to push the experience up the scale toward a 7, 8, 9, 10. Like, I'm going to really try to do something special here and be creative and try to make this a little bit more special.
Right. And, you know, the more time and planning that you put into a sexual encounter, the better it's going to be. And that is actually, like, I'm going to bust a myth here, because a lot of people will say, well, if I've got a plan for it, then that means it won't be spontaneous or as good. I'm sorry. I've never had really amazing spontaneous sex. The best sex is when I've actually planned and put forethought into it and thought about it, and you know, because then I won't be tired and I won't be too full from eating supper or starving because I haven't had anything all day. I mean, planning actually makes it a lot better.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that completely. It reminds me of a story I heard. I don't know how exactly it relates, but I'm thinking it, so I'll just go ahead and share it. There was a preacher, and he ascribed to this theory that you should not prepare your messages in advance, because you should be spontaneous. You should be filled with the Holy Spirit, and God will tell you in that moment what you're supposed to do. So he went to church, and normally they sing 4 songs, and then the preacher gets up to preach. Well, they did 4 songs, and the preacher felt like he wasn't hearing from God yet. He didn't have the message, so he whispered to the song leader, "Do one more song. I don't have the message yet." And at the end of that song, he said to the song leader, "Do one more song. I don't have the message yet." And then another song went by, "Do one more song. I don't have the message yet." And at the end of that song, the preacher said, "I think I got the message from God, and God's message is He wants me to start preparing my messages." So your point is well taken, that there's nothing wrong with preparation, forethought. Get ready for this thing. It makes it more special.
It's absolutely 100% okay to follow a script. I mean, it truly is. And just you think about when you see people on TV in the movies and they've got all this romance going down, do you know that they are not at all winging it? They are doing exactly what their writers told them to do. And those writers have agonized over every single thing that they've written out. So, and they've had 5,000 takes. So it is absolutely okay for us to be like, we've got a script. First, we're going to do this, and then we're going to do this, and now we're going to do that, because it helps put both of you at ease. You both know what to expect. You can both feel more excited. And yeah, preparation is totally important.
Right. I think that's a good idea. And I'm just thinking out loud, but I can only imagine that Valentine's Day is almost like the perfect excuse to prepare a special day for one another, right? Because it is Valentine's Day, and people, I think most couples, like, have this intuitive sense, like, well, okay, it's Valentine's Day, we're supposed to do something really special. Should we go out to eat? Should I get flowers? Should I order candy? You know, should I prepare a bubble bath? Do I buy satin sheets for the bed? It's like people tend to put more forethought into the day because it's a special day.
And love is kind of in the air. I mean, it is everywhere.
Right. Thank goodness. So, Keelie, do you have any other thoughts about Valentine's Day? Just any other thoughts about it at all that you would share?
Well, I mean, to kind of combat that issue that I think a lot of people experience with the, feeling too much pressure, is the best thing to do is for both of you guys to talk about it ahead of time and be very clear. One thing that I think couples don't do enough of is just give very, very specific instructions to the other person about what they want. And I don't know if men deal with this, but I know women deal with this. That it's like they almost think that if they have to tell their husband what it is they need out of them, that it will take away a lot of the meaning. But I think when you grow up enough to realize that if you will just tell him exactly what you expect out of him, you're going to be happier. So I would say that a couple should really talk through their expectations. What do you expect on Valentine's? Do you expect me to buy you something? Do you expect me to make you something? Do you expect me to take you to supper? How much, how much do we need to actually prepare for this so that one person doesn't show up unprepared and failed expectations? So if you're worried about not meeting the expectations of the others, just have those conversations now.
Right. I like that. That's really good, Keelie. And, as a pastor and a licensed professional counselor, I have the opportunity, I'm kind of in this unique position in my life to kind of see into a lot of people's lives and marriages. And we know that a very, very common theme that so many couples struggle with is just communication, the way they talk to each other. And I would say that almost without exception, couples that are in trouble and are struggling and end up coming into the counseling process to do some work, almost without exception, they don't communicate well. And I think a part of the counseling process so often is just literally helping people learn to talk again, giving people permission to talk and helping them learn to do that in a healthy way. And the thing that you said about expectations, so I really like that. It just feels like what you're saying is just communicate, talk to each other so that the right hand knows what the left hand's thinking and feeling, and the left hand knows what the right hand's thinking. And you use the word expectation. What do you expect?
Yeah.
It's like I've been married to my wife 33 years, and I know her really, really well. And sometimes I'd bet that I can almost read her mind. But I can't always read her mind. So if she's thinking something, or she needs something, or she would like something, or prefer something, how am I going to know that if she don't tell me? So it's incredibly important. And the only other thought that I had there in response to what you said, you used the word expectation, and I just was thinking, I wonder if the word like might be a good word. Instead of me saying to my spouse, what do you expect? If I said, what would you like? Can I just ask you, what would you like on Valentine's Day? What would you prefer? Like, let's play a game here for a minute and just pretend like you just had the perfect Valentine's Day. Just a wonderful, awesome day that would be incredibly special and meaningful to you. I want you to tell me what happened on that day, what made it so special, and almost let your spouse daydream with you, or almost like fantasize or think out loud. Well, I would love if this happened, ABC, XYZ. I'd love a foot rub, I'd love a bubble bath. And kind of find out where their heart is and where their head is and what they're thinking, and it'll give you a target to aim at, because now you know what's important to them and what would speak to their heart.
Yeah, and you also have to just take into account your life and your season of life. If you've got young babies getting up all night long, you're going to have to, make some real plans and be a little bit more flexible, and maybe you can't go do something amazing, but that doesn't mean that you can't do what your wife or your husband needs, because, a mom of toddlers and a baby, she might go, you know what I really want for Valentine's Day? Just for someone else to cook my food for me and I can eat it without somebody tugging on me. Right. You know what I mean? It could be
That's so
simple.
Good, Keelie. That's really good. And it actually leads into a very similar question that I was going to ask you, so it's a perfect segue. But I will say that I see from our clock that we've run out of time for this episode of the podcast. So I think what we're going to do is wrap this episode up. And I really invite you guys to come back next week, which on the year that this airs, February 14th, is going to be Valentine's Day next week. And we'll continue our discussion with Keelie Reason part 2 of our episode. And in the meantime, you can check out what Keelie does at lovehopeadventure.com and IamTheSexTalkLady.com. So, Keelie, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
I think you're totally awesome, and you have some really good things to share and some insights. And I'm a guy, trying to do this podcast, and I know that a lot of women listen to the podcast, which I appreciate, but I think the biggest part of my audience is guys. So I really appreciate just bringing in like the voice of Eve, a feminine voice, a feminine heart, and just letting you talk about these things. And I'm hopeful that it might inspire some of us guys that tend to be like bam bam, and so we really appreciate what you're doing for us, Keelie.
Thanks so much for having me.
Okay, God bless you guys. Come back next week. I'll look forward to seeing you then, and have an awesome day.
Thanks for listening. Visit powerofpurity.org for more resources and information. And if this podcast has been helpful or encouraging, please invite a friend to listen. Until next time, remember, there's power in purity.